Well, hello, Richard.
Hi there, Sharon.
Hi. I wanted to have a short chat with you about what you brought to the last Olive Branch meeting.
Sure.
And you chose the chapter Spirituality for an Ecological Age in Lloyd Gearing's book, Reimagining God. And I wonder if you could tell us, oh, there we are. Wonder if you could tell us why you chose the book and this particular chapter.
Well, thank you. I chose the book because it was looking at me from the shelf of our local library, the Chartwell Library, and it's a book by Lloyd Geering that I haven't read. I haven't read all of his works, but a fair number. So it's always tantalizing to see a new work by someone that you've read before and enjoyed. It was published in 2014, I see. So it's not all that new, but new to our library. The chapter that you refer to that I spoke about and brought to our gathering is chapter 14. And I wouldn't recommend just reading chapter 14 because there's some quite provocative titles in the chapters before chapter 14, such as Christianity Without Christ.
Do the chapters build on each other? Like, do they feed into the next chapter, or are they standalone chapters?
No, I think they do. There is a sequence going through different thinkers and different ages of faith and culminating in talk of ethics and spirituality for our time.
And what are some of the main points that Geering makes in this chapter, Spirituality for an Ecological Age?
He starts by saying that, as he said before, that we live in a post-Christian world, which he particularly dates from about the year 2000. So before, he's talked about an axial age and then a Christian era, and now he talks about the post-Christian or the global era. And he also calls it the ecological age. And he has the year 2000 in mind as a kind of demarcation point when we moved into a new way of global thinking, and particularly post-Christian thinking.
Right, yes.
Culture.
Yes.
So that's the beginning. And from there, he talks about the fact that we need to create a global culture that takes into account the ecological crisis that unites all humankind. And he posits that, or he suggests that we need if we have a religion at all, and it's not clear to me whether he's really suggesting a new religion, but he is suggesting a new spirituality, which is grounded in the ecological crisis and our response to it as a whole human species, not just as Western civilization or Christian tradition, but as a whole species. The whole of humankind needs to be involved and caught up in the protection and preservation of the earth.
And do you want to say more?
Just that he says that this will be a natural spirituality, not supernatural, but it will draw on figures from the past. So he names, for example, St. Francis of Assisi as a key figure from the Christian past on whom we could draw for inspiration and images.
And what's your response to the chapter?
Well, it's mixed, I have to say, Sharon. Not that I'm in any position to criticize Lloyd Geering. I really can't even do up the laces of his shoes. But I do think he comes from a liberal age, and he possibly has more faith in human nature than I have, that we could, in fact, develop a global culture that is full of compassion and sensitivity to the earth, and thereby preserve creation for ourselves and our children's children. But I don't know how he would deal with human nature itself. He's quite positive implicitly about the ongoing progress of liberal democracy, and also about human nature being basically, I think, intended towards the preservation of the earth and towards compassion. And but maybe because we're living in a pandemic that he didn't foresee perhaps in 2014, I've just a little bit more, not cynical, but I do think that spirituality does have to take into account the tendency of humankind towards self-destruction and hatred and disintegration. And I'm not sure that we can do that with a natural religion. I'm not myself personally going to let go that faith in God, transcendent and over against us and to whom we're answerable quite so readily as Geering says we can or should. So I'm not inclined to the theism of an earlier age, but I do think that if we say that humanity stands alone in this outsiderless world, I don't know how we deal with human hubris and pride and the inclination to destroy and hate. So, I mean, it's very readable. It's quite rational, and perhaps it's another point that maybe he's got more faith in human rationality or the propensity of human beings to be guided by rationality. Maybe I'm aware of other currents and undercurrents through the human psyche and human society that tend towards disintegration as much as they do towards integration. And so that's where it is, Sharon. It's very readable, very intelligent, very rational, and it, from my mind, there are layers of missing where I want inspiration perhaps, or a sense of the aesthetic dimension of life, a little more about the ethical and where the basis for being ethical comes from. So maybe I'm still catching up with Lloyd Geering, and in some places very much indebted to him, but also asking questions of his work.
Right. Oh, thank you very much, Richard.
I'd certainly recommend it. He's that important a figure and writes so well that I'd recommend it, particularly to New Zealand people, readers. Does that make sense, Sharon?
It does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll just hold up the book again once more, chapter 14, but
God.
it's worth reading. Reimagining God.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you, Sharon. I'll